everyone.
And economic development. The very theme of the conference is renewable energy forward for economic and sustainable development. Energy policy is of course one of the key drivers in an economic development and sustainable development. But I would like to say at the outset that energy policy probably is more effective in terms of developing sustainable energy system that will in many ways contribute to sustainable development. And development is whether energy consumption would have to go hand in hand with the GDP or economic growth, whether there is the decoupling of the energy with economic growth possible. And in fact, many of the industrialized economies, developed economies, have been experiencing a declining energy intensity. That means with the provision of the cleaner energy in the supply side, one can achieve developing the usage of the solid biomass fuel is very closely related with the GDP per capita or economic growth, the level of economic development in different countries. The lower income countries happen to depend more heavily on the solid biomass fuel, and as a result, they are also exposed to more more particulate emission and so on. Again, this whether every country will have to follow this path. The developing countries which are having lower GDP per capita, they are still trying to increase their economic output and so on. Whether they have to follow necessarily this path of climbing the hill of the environmental Kuznets curve, and then only they start seeing benefit of cleaner environment, cleaner atmosphere, and so on. So I think the advancement of renewable energy technologies, the declining prices.
Technology for enlightening us on renewable energy and what is happening around the world at the moment. I'd also like to invite on the dais Krishnaraj BC, Secretary Science and Technology Ministry, on stage please. As well as, I believe, our special guest for today, Honorable Dr. Yuvraj Khattura, Minister of Finance, has prior commitments and who has to leave. I'd like to request him for his formal address.
We cannot assure other kind of security and be prosperous with a sustainable Energy is important for growth. Energy, you saw in the graph how energy and growth are correlated. But at some point, you don't need more energy to generate the same level of output. There lies the role of energy efficiency. And you saw the inverted Kuznets curve. I hope that really works. But so far I am not very optimistic of that curve being really sloping downwards. I wish we could do it and see that it's all about sustainable development. And this is what, and also technology we have. If you put technological barrier to have access of modern energy technology to low-income countries, or in particular LDCs like ours, it would be a kind of betrayal to the whole spirit of SDG 10, which is reducing in-country and inter-country inequality. And those countries which are lagging behind in terms of development and growth, how do we support them to also catch up so that the very spirit of SDGs to leave no one behind really works? Leaving no one behind means leaving no individual and also no country for me. So let's be open on technology transfer. And let's see that energy is a tradable commodity. You should not be putting any non-tariff barriers into electricity trading. That will really hurt the regional trading on energy. We do have a lot of complementarity in our energy sources and our consumption patterns. And unless we make energy as a tradable commodity, and unless we have a grid, and unless we have a system, network, connectivity to see that electricity becomes a tradable good, it doesn't really help the whole world to see that modern energy is available to all people all the time in a sustainable and affordable manner. I think this conference should really think about such kind of global and regional cooperation and the energy infrastructure that we should really build to see that electricity really becomes affordable and tradable commodity. Let me just take
pathway for the clean energy future is critical, particularly in the case of the
renewable energy for urban and rural development, energy, water resources, and inclusion of the underdevelopment, poverty, and way forward for the countries of the region to work together, since many of our challenges are similar and there are multifarious complementarities across the region that can be harnessed to maximize the utilization of scarce resources. It is a matter of great satisfaction that we have begun to take small steps forward in this regard. The countries, regionally, sub-regionally, and to fuel our development needs. Let me very briefly touch upon the energy scenario in Bangladesh and particularly what we are doing on the renewable energy sector. Bangladesh, under the Dynamic Solar Alliance, to scale up our solar power generation. It is a matter of great satisfaction that Bangladesh has now become one of the global leaders in the field of installed solar home systems, particularly in the off-grid area. As of now, 5.2 million solar home systems have been installed in the country. While we are doing our best, the share of renewables in the electricity generation is only 3%, though the renewable energy policy mandates that 10% of the electricity has to be met from the renewables by 2020.
Participants from both international and national sectors, media colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I'm very happy to be here this morning. It's too technical for me to understand all these technical terminologies, but what I know is this is very important, and Renewables University is very happy to be a part of the big process.
For developing a global sustainable environment and a commitment to climate change targets. This holds true for the country like Nepal, which has immense potential for various forms of renewable energy sources to become renewable energy, research and development, along with the maturing of the renewable energy industry. This has led to the continued development in the field of renewable energy technology, including energy efficiency to clean development. I am pleased to see that the theme of this conference, Renewable Energy Forward for Economic and Sustainable Development, covers the challenges and the prospects for developing renewable energy technology for the socio-economic and the development.
Distinguished delegates from different countries, media persons, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, let me welcome you all here in this important conference, and please allow me to take this opportunity to extend my sincere thanks to the organizer for the distinguished gathering of scholars, professionals and other dignified personalities. I believe this fourth international conference on renewable energy technology for rural and urban development under the theme of renewable energy forward for economic and sustainable development is a relevant endeavor on behalf of the organizers. The theme is extremely important.
Priority area of the present government. In the context of sustainable development, the objective is to access to affordable, reliable, sustainable and modern energy. This is the objective of the Goal 7 of Sustainable Development. So, I will be talking about such energy, investment on such energy in the context of Nepal. who are the investors in the sector in Nepal. If we see the practice, what we find that the government of Nepal, or through large hydropower projects, micro hydropower grid and grid connected solar systems, transmission and distribution systems, improvement in energy efficiency, and operation and maintenance cost. Also, we have considered the cost for addressing climate change impact. And our exercise, which was conducted for the National Planning Commission, came to the figures that during the 2016 to 30, during the 2016 to 30, the last line, the average annual investment required is the 260 million in Nepali rupee, 260 million per year during the period of 2016 to 2030 is needed to achieve those targets which was shown in the previous slides. And the total sum of money required comes to be around 3,906 billion Nepali rupee, which is equivalent around 34-35 billion US dollar. Because of the exchange rate volatility, now the exchange rate of dollar has reached to the highest level, which is around $1 equal to 117 or 16 Nepali rupee.
Respected Chair, that is finished. Now going. Your Speaker, distinguished international ladies and gentlemen, very good afternoon. My name is Robin Shrestha. I am currently working with the World Bank, and before joining the World Bank, I used to teach in academic universities in Nepal, and then before that, I was working with Nepal Electricity Authority. So you can say that I'm an old man. My academic background is I'm an engineer and economist by training, which I've spent a lot of time doing that exercises. So, timely and adequate investment is prerequisite for any sustainable development or development of what you do. So if you do not invest in timely fashion, you will face consequences. Overinvestment or underinvestment would result in either wastage of resources. If you do overinvestment, you will waste the resources. If you underinvestment, then it will result in the shortage of services. So it is challenging. So how to balance overinvestment and underinvestment? But studies have indicated, this morning Professor Shrestha has also mentioned that, I mean, you are better off over-investing than under-investing. The consequence of underinvestment is very, very serious than over-investing. So it is very important that there is adequate investment, necessary investment, or slightly over-investment. If you under-investment, then it will result in the load setting, shortage of energy services, so that is very, very serious. So what it means is that this issue necessitated a good investment plan in the energy sector. So how do you derive the good investment plan? Is that you need to, this good investment plan is guided by optimal investment planning or investment planning models. So, for example, in electricity generation, we have various candidate hydropower, candidate solar, so various candidate generation technology, and we saw that this morning also it was discussed, and internationally we heard that the price of solar has been falling dramatically, significantly, and some even argue that now solar photovoltaic will compete with hydropower, but I do not believe so. I mean, the price of solar is falling, and then there is an energy limitation. You cannot generate solar energy during the night time and during the summer time, during the cloudy season. So there are a number of issues. So just by comparing the price of energy technology at the...
A few remarks about the energy system and investment in the energy system. This is my first time to be in Nepal, and I'm very pleased that the opportunity to speak at this conference is the reason I was in history. But the energy sector isn't behaving like that's the case. So there's a couple of things that I think really need to be done now with some urgency. The first is to recognize, as previous speakers have said, that you cannot build a stable electrical grid on wind and solar alone. We must deal with the storage problem. And while batteries are going to get materially better, without a doubt, both in terms of performance and in terms of cost, they are never going to be good enough to fill the gap. We're going to have to do something else, possibly fuel, possibly other mechanisms of storage, but we need something else, and we need it now, so that real plans can really be developed to get all fossil carbon in the system. The second point I would make is that, particularly in the developed countries, we now need to be very clear that the private sector is going to have to make most of these investments. Governments are simply not going to tax their people enough to pay for trillions and trillions of dollars of investment in the energy sector. The private sector will have to fill that gap, which means they need to be able to make money. And as policymakers, and all of those of you involved in policy, it is very important that you think deeply about, well, how will the private sector make money?
Dr. Krishna Prasad Oli, Honorable Chairman of the Planning Commission, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon and namaste. I'd like to talk a bit about a particular financing instrument that I think has not been sufficiently used yet in Nepal, which is resource-based financing. Before that, one few words about SNV. SNV is a long-standing partner in Nepal, and since the last 25 years we've also been partnering here in the energy sector. And if you look at our achievement, SNV works in the agriculture, water, and energy sector, and the energy sectors, we've enabled, I think, through our work, more than 8 million people to access one form or another of renewable energy. One of the ways that SNV basically helps to build animal energy markets, build sustainable energy markets, is by using this instrument called result-based financing. Let me talk about some of the key characteristics of that. The first one is that result-based financing represents a shift in thinking. It's not the same business as usual in the traditional energy market programs. Here you move from upfront subsidies to basically conditional post-incentives. The risk shifts from donors to the private sector. Basically, you're looking at all barriers and see that every barrier represents another opportunity. The other thing is that the private sector is fully in the lead. This is not a program where people leading that program tell businesses how to run their business. They run their business exactly as they want to. We would not get involved in that. So result-based financing is actually a temporary incentive that helps to trigger growth. The way it works is that you look at a particular energy market, whether that's solar or hydro or biomass, and you look at what are the key barriers at this moment in that market. Once you have identified those key barriers, you say, let us identify, incentivize the solution to those key barriers. So you could use result-based financing to increase the uptake, on imports and quality. You could incentivize financing. If you wanted to incentivize outreach so that more
keynote speaker and friends. Actually, people, when we say there's an investment in energy sector and sustainable development, there are two key factors, keywords. One is energy. When you say energy is available everywhere. It's from biomass, it's from solar, it's from wind, it's from hydro, it's from coal, from everything. So we have to see which one is fit for us, number one. Number two, I can see how to make it sustainable. Sustainable doesn't mean we change everything. Like I can see more than 60% energy is coming from the firewood today. It doesn't mean we change all this 60%. We make it sustainable and try to maximize the cleanness. That's more than sufficient. And we have to see the price also. Without price, I think we can't make it sustainable. And how much energy we need for the country. We did some study long back, and we found that maybe 3,000 megawatt we can use for cooking today to replace the cooking gas, especially which we go from India. 1,000 megawatt for the industry, I'm talking about today, and maybe another 1,000 megawatt for transport and other business lights and everything. So our demand is not more than 5,000 megawatt today. So energy export is must if we are thinking 15,000 megawatt and 20,000 megawatt to make it more sustainable. So when we combine all these things, then only the energy can be sustainable and energy can help us to make this. Energy is basic. We say gas means food, shelter and clothes is our basic need. No. The basic of basic is energy. The food not possible to cook without energy. The shelter will not be built without energy. And the clothes not possible to run the factory without energy. So energy is everything. And energy is a key indicator for the development. Where we are lacking actually. Our per capita is so low, lowest in the South Asia, lowest in the everywhere, that's it. So I think without increasing energy, the sustainable development is almost impossible. Now, which energy? Can you go next? Can you go next? Okay. First, then you have to see which energy is available in the region. In our case, we have no coal, we have no fossil fuel, we have solar, we have maybe some wind, or we have huge hydropower potential. And I tell you a very good story there. We did some study with some German university in 2008, and we found that Nepal's potential on water value base, I'm saying water value base and peak energy base is about 150,000 megawatt. 100,000 megawatt is commercially viable. That's the number we got from together with the German university. We did some study in 2008 and 9, and the potential looks number 5 in the world. Next. Next. So you can see, okay, we may get energy from solar, we may get energy from the wind, we may get energy from the coal, but who will control this flood? So hydropower is not only for the energy. It's first for the water management, and second is for the peak power. And actually, a good story, I was just going through the energy price for tomorrow, for India. You know what's the price for tomorrow in India? 18 rupees Indian currency for a few minutes, and it's 9 rupees Indian currency for the peak hours from 6 to 11 night, evening, let's say. It's an opportunity for us. So hydro can be not for the run-of-river, it can be for the water management, and it can be for the peak power, and this is sustainable. And when you say sustainable, sometimes we get confused. We are talking wind. I tell you, friends, I've been to wind means many times. Without infrastructure, wind energy is impossible, and we are too weak in our infrastructure. One single blade is about 65 meters long. And can you imagine taking 65 meter long blade, 12-ton weight to our hilltop or somewhere in the Jomsom or this Gambia? It's impossible. So thinking for wind energy is not very good for today. Maybe after we have big infrastructure in future, that will be sustainable. Of course, off-grid solar is fantastic. It's doing good job. I believe, I think 18% something like that power is supplied by the solar today. But our base energy is hydropower. That's must. And we are so lucky. The water management, the water need for the southern country, especially UP and Bihar or the Bangladesh, is so big that making all these water management policies with the big power, we can have big money from the energy and we can have big money from the water management. So government, so cooking gas we have to replace. If we don't replace cooking gas, this cooking gas is going to kill us. It's not sustainable at all. And we have seen during the blockade from India how we suffered with the cooking gas. And we were running for 1 cylinder gas from day to day for weeks. No one able to cook the food. So to make it more sustainable for the development, I think replacing cooking gas must be the first target for the government after they have subsidy energy for the market. So Hyderabad is not going to help you for the long run for another 20, 30, 40 years. Hyderabad is going to help you for another 10, 15, 20 years to make our GDP higher.
And let me start by saying I'm now going to speak very personally. And I say that because President Trump is actually quite popular in the state of Arizona. He carried that state. And our university tries to stay very, very deeply out of politics. So I'm not speaking for the university, I'm speaking personally. Let me also say as a preface, I didn't vote for Mr. Trump. And therefore I don't actually feel obligated to explain. Just thought I would say that. I remain very optimistic about the medium term for the United States for the reasons I gave in my lecture. It is true that the President announced the United States would withdraw from the Paris Accords, but I would point out that literally in parallel with that announcement, hundreds of companies, many, many big municipalities, including the main municipality in Arizona, the city of Phoenix, as well as other state-level groups across the United States, came out and said, stay in the Paris Accords. That included actually ExxonMobil, our largest energy company in the country. The points I was making about the shift in the attitude of business is, I'm very serious about that. For those of you that had the opportunity to look at my resume, I spent 34 years with British Petroleum, retired as president of the Asia Pacific region, so had a long history in the oil sector. And I can tell you, I was at a meeting in Rome in April where there were the heads of many of the world's big oil companies, along with big financial heads, and it didn't take more than about 30 minutes to agree to two really important things. One is carbon has to be priced, and that included the oil company executives. And the other was nobody believed we'll achieve the Paris Accords, which would be disastrous. So I'm optimistic, but perhaps not under this administration. To some of the other questions, the diversification example, I was probably doing okay until you added cost at the end. Getting a renewable energy system that is stable as well as low cost is not easy. I don't think we're there yet. And I can't point to a place that I think has the solution in the way that you were asking the question. Although I believe there are many places around the world that are moving in that direction. We heard from Germany earlier today. We heard from the European Union. They're making very important steps in that direction. There are good steps being made in a number of places in Asia, and the United States has some great examples at the city and state level. But I don't think anybody has really got to the point you're describing, and that's why I emphasized it in my remarks. We need to make progress there. To the question about reservoirs and storage, I think you have to be a little bit careful about retirement of dams in the United States because we've got many that are very old, and frankly, they would be too expensive to repair. It's not clear that they serve any particularly important role. any longer in either flight control. Many of them don't have electricity generation. And a lot of those are just simply going away because they don't make a lot of sense. But there is interest in storage. We do use dams quite effectively in the northwest of the United States in particular. And there's a proposal very recently to use the Hoover Dam in Lake Powell as pump storage. Now, my personal view is that that's going to be hard simply because of the unpredictability of stream flows in the Colorado River Basin. But nonetheless, very serious people are looking at it, and there's very real potential. I think it's a very valid option for storage. Although I do want to emphasize, with respect to all storage mechanisms, I don't think that there is a clear winner yet. And there won't be one mechanism for storage. Batteries are going to be really important for short periods, especially in providing grid stability and in being able to both provide power and take power in very short. They're going to be very important without any doubt. And I don't want to leave the audience thinking I'm against batteries. But for longer term storage, and particularly for seasonal storage, it's just going to be way too expensive to have literally mountains of batteries to try to provide seasonal storage. We're going to need something else. And we should be exploring all possibilities. Then to the last question about solar energy companies in the United States, if I understood the question correctly, you're wondering why it's not more profitable and why we're losing companies in the United States. Was that? About 20 years before. China made the strategic decision to invest very, very heavily in solar energy, and they got massive capacity. And they did something that companies like mine, British Petroleum, wouldn't do. We went out of the solar business. We were the largest solar energy company in the world at one point, and one of the first in business. But what we refuse to do is spend $1 billion or more on ultra-automated, high-volume manufacturing facilities. And the Chinese chose to do that. And built many of them, and in other places in Asia as well. And those, with respect to manufacturing in the United States, were so efficient and so much lower cost than anything we had in the US. It really stripped us down to one company that's left. First Solar is still operating. They use cadmium telluride as opposed to silicon. It's an amorphous layer as opposed to crystalline. And they've been able to stay in there, and they're now actually doing very well with that technology. But we went through a period where it was just not profitable. And as you're suggesting, subsidies accelerated that. So we're now in the stage, I think, the whole world of asking the question, well, what is that round is over, what is the next round?
Thank you, Gary. It was wonderful. Our energy policy and vision for Nepal. At the same time, we are entering into developing 15th five-year plan of the government of Nepal. So I am confident that
local climate and now dealing with the observed data, this shows two diagrams regarding the observed data. So this data shows the maximum wind speed during the June and July period and throughout the year. And during the for the diagonal variation, is the wind is very high during the daytime. That is for 12 to 2 hours. And this is observed versus model. The x-axis contains the month and y-axis contains the wind speed. The model is 10 by 10 kilometers. The height of the valley, or those types of terrain parameters are lost in the model. So it can highlight those particular characteristics. So the very big wind speed are not seen there. Almost is covers the similar patterns use of the observed data, and it has very high RMS value, that is of 0.8 meter per second. And I have plotted density, probability density over observed and model data. And for the 2010 or 2003, 2004, and 2005, and for the these years, the density plot are almost similar. Here also you can see that the model is not so good at the wind speed higher than 10 to 11 to 14 wind speed. For lower, it is very good. It is little bit overestimating out there.
Of implementation of solar, you say here, no, it is not. This is the big problem. Yeah. It's a study on energy use, greenhouse gas emissions, and global warming potential for pre-monsoon paddy production in Japa district in East Nepal. So please, Padam, present.
UP and Bihar, except the villages in Tarai, the most of the villages don't have a very good correlation because, like I said, the volume of economy is very high in those villages versus our hilly villages in Nepal that do not have this kind of load. Hence, a requirement of a rural economic system. We are also looking to pilot this particular idea in one of the rural villages, in, let's say, in the district of Mustan. So we are certainly moving forward. How do we more brush up these particular in the context of Nepal? But certainly this is more like a testing of a hypothesis that whether the enterprise-driven model is the solution to the ever increasing share of subsidy that is being put up in the sector.
Thank you again. We start to get limited time. But I think it's very important to get your feedback and to get your questions. So let us start with 3 questions, not more than 3 questions. Please.
Installed capacity is 7,868, and out of that we have a lot of big percentage in here. We have high-speed diesel, gas and coal, and we have a very small amount of hydro and renewable sources in here. And here we can see the pie chart of that, and a large percentage of this comes from the natural gas of our country, which is in reserve of our country. So current scenario of renewable energy, most of our renewable energy comes from solar home system, and we have a very small amount of hydro and wind energy. And if we go to our next plan, our current capacity is around 17,000. So we have our power systems, and still we have a very small share in renewable energy policy in 20 and 41. But in our renewable energy policy and we plan to have in 41 we plan to have 40,000 megawatts, but our government has planned to have a 10% share of the renewable energy policy in 2020, and for that purpose they have introduced Sustainable and Renewable Energy Development Authority, which is called SREDA. So SREDA is working for renewable energy, and now I will talk about part by part energy scenario of Bangladesh. So from here we can see the graph from the left. We can see the energy, solar energy in the world, and from the graph of the left we can see how much energy sun we have in Bangladesh. So from this graph we can see that we have more than 10 hours of solar sunlight in Bangladesh. So there is great prospect of solar energy in Bangladesh, and from here we can see the highest and lowest intensity of radiation in watt per meter square, and we can see that in the mid time we have the highest amount, and if we see the monthly average of solar radiation profile in Bangladesh, we can see that April and May we have the higher, and all around the year we have average amount of almost solar energy. So there is a good prospect of installing solar power in Bangladesh. So from here we can see we have Infrastructure Development Company Limited of Bangladesh. So from this graph we can see that the cumulative amount of solar home system which is installed in Bangladesh. So currently it's 4.13 million in 2018. Here we can see from the next slide that the target of EatCall program is 16 million solar home system by 2021, and we have already achieved 4.13 million. And it has a great source of employment for the rural people and the poor people, and it's have a power generation of 150 megawatts, and it saves the fossil fuel of 200,000 ton a year. So after solar energy, I would like to talk about the wind energy. So now we have a few wind energy projects in Bangladesh. Among them, we have 19, and we have a less incentive in less budget in R&D or for this and regional cooperation, financial support for new projects. These are the challenges we face in the field of renewable energy, and I would like to talk about the opportunity and recommendation. And in here we opportunities we have that implementing renewable energy, we can diversify our economy, and we can have cooperation with our neighboring and developed countries, and our government, that is we should we should put more importance on giving financial incentive and proper networking among the stakeholders of renewable energy. And we have India and Nepal. Currently our government is importing energy because we due to industrial development we have a huge energy demand, and most of the people they suffer from substandard energy. So therefore,
more than 20% of Nepali people are still out of proper energy access, and most of those people live in the rural communities. After the recent federal restructuring and administrative restructuring, local government now have more responsibility and more power to harness the potential of energy as a key driver of local development. And to that end, they need to plan, they need to formulate plans and policies in their regional or local energy systems. As we all know that Nepal is a signatory of the Sustainable Development Agenda. The agenda can be used, and the targets and goals mentioned in the agendas can be used to formulate different plans and policies at regional, national and local level. So the rural energy, the needs and resource gaps that led to these projects are energy access must be defined in very binary terms. Either there is electricity access or there is no electricity access. Either there is access to modern cooking fuels or there is no access to modern cooking fuels. But now the discussions is more not only on the availability of access, availability of energy, but to the quantity and quality of energy. As the Sustainable Development Goals mentioned, it's about the reliability and energy security and other different quantitative and qualitative aspects. Now the energy planning also needs to shift from sectoral and national level to local level. For that, the STG framework can be used, and there's the MTF or the multi-tier framework, which is a part of the global tracking framework by the Sustainable Energy for All initiative, which can be used. And in short, multi-tier framework is a framework which divides energy access in different levels from tier 0 to tier 5, and the goal is to universally achieve tier 5 of energy access by the end of year 2030. Till now, not much research and practice has been done to adapt the multi-tier framework for energy access in Nepal, and different technology, and there's not much work that has been done on comparison of technology options and optimization models for planning at local level. So the objectives are to build a backcasting energy access planning model, which basically means that we set a goal at the end of 2030 and we backcast the scenario to achieve the goal at 2030. And it encompasses technical, economic and environmental dimensions to assess energy resources and electricity generation potential within the catchment of a community, and to calculate present energy demand and projected future energy demand till 2030 based on discussed optimization of available technologies. And to talk a bit about energy access, that is a little bit different than the traditional definition of energy access that we are used to. So UN has made universal energy access to modern energy services by 2030 a global goal, and it has created a global tracking framework to monitor the progress in energy access. And similarly, energy access is defined as access to electricity and also access to modern cooking fuel. So I told you something about the global tracking framework to track your progress, and multi-tier framework which mentioned which defines energy access at several tiers. And to summarize the MTF,
I am Dinesh Kumar Sai from Tokyo State University, Vijay Library. Today I am going to present a study on household energy uses patterns in urban and rural areas of Nepal. The household energy demand has increased significantly in various countries, including Nepal also. And in Nepal, 94% energy used in the domestic sector. Major sources of the energy are firewood, electricity, solar panels, fossil fuels, and small automobiles, etc. And electricity use an important factor for the quality of life and development of nation also. Nepal has a large island country and it has diversity of geographical variation. There is a probability of huge increasing of electricity production, but we are importing electricity due to the high demand of electricity. 81% population residing in rural communities in Nepal. Cooling. Then you can see also in this figure there are electricity is using lighting in the all areas. LPG is available in semi-urban and urban areas, and it's mainly used for cooling purposes. In this conclusion, the average electricity from was 171.2 megajoule per household per month, and firewood and steel were main sources of cookings for heating in the rural areas. But LPG and electricity are the main sources for energy cooking in semi-urban areas. And electricity was mainly used for the lighting. The total energy used for lighting was 1642.5 kilojoule per household. The use of electricity lamps and mobile phones were 100% households usually, and the access of electricity appliances is very low. The electricity and GDP is highly correlated, and also the proportion of the GDP and CO2 emission were also highly correlated. The proportion of LED use looks also affected by the education level of. Thank you for the kind attention.
I am Retrud. The article is prepared by myself and Martin Yates, the professor in the UPNU. So we are going to talk about the cross-cutting issues, to what extent these are being mainstreamed at the local government level. Mainly focusing on the far western development region, far western state number 7. You see the time is very changing and the politics is changing. During the time when we prepared the report, it was during that time the name was the state number 7. Now it is far western state. So we are talking about this far western state. You see, we have in Nepal we have all the policy and legal documents. They acknowledge the importance of environment, including renewable energy, and even the local development planning guidelines. It considers the importance of including environment into the development issues. So, from the policy perspective, we don't have issues. Even you see, we talked while seeing the presentations from the very beginning of today, we found that there is a technology, there is innovations, there is a subsidy, but to what extent those technology are being adopted at the local level is the big issue. So we are trying to highlight on that issue, to what extent they are considered. So this is a case study, and basically based on the interview with the key informants over there, and also observation of the site. And you see, most of the local governments today, they have websites. You can see their plan, energy development plans. So we got the case study from that site with this reference. Yeah, already told that the environment is considered in every policy and legal documents. You see, the far west region, it is rich in biodiversity itself. About 53% of the land is covered by forest, which is very good itself. It represents the how rich is this area in terms of biodiversity. You see, in Nepal, the constitution provision that about 44% of the forest should be maintained, but it is already over the 44%. In the meantime, the area is rich in this globally significant biodiversity resources. Rhinoceros are there, tigers are there, and in terms of high hills, there is snow leopards. In terms of mid hills, you can see many non-timber forest products are there, and in the lowlands, you can see the tigers are there, and there obviously it is the potential for tourism and forest-based micro-enterprises, and also the micro-agri potential is there. Even the non-timber forest product-based micro-enterprises can be developed that help to cross that state. If you see the other side of the coin, the poverty issue is very big there compared to other states. You see,
we made Mr. Utsav Sri Rajbi. Sorry. Utsav Sri Rajbi.
Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon, everybody. So here today I am presenting a tiny bit of the results of my research, the data gained from my PhD research. So it's about the finding out the demand, the load characteristics of the residential sector of Kathmandu Valley. So first of all, I'll get back to the introduction, which is universal electricity is the versatile form of energy that can be used for any form of energy which can be transferred, and thus the electricity has also been targeted for the access of energy at the modern fuels by the SE4All, Sustainable Energy for All, the ADB, World Bank, everyone, and there are 5 targets already. So for the management of electricity and the distribution and supply, there should be non-characteristic of the demand type. So how demand is distributed. And I have done for the residence sector because the electricity authority can provide data for a specific line. It cannot distinguish between the residential or commercial or the cottage industries, which is given by the same line. So this is the survey-based study. So in national context, we all know there have been deficit of electric supply, and we had faced load shedding for more than 50% of the hours of the day. And even in the current context, when the load shedding has been said to be the cut off or reduced, so it is how it is done. It is done by purchasing electricity from India. It was the 35% in year 2017, and it is anticipated by the Nepal Electricity Authority that it could reach 37%. So we are getting the electricity, but still it's not sustainable because we are importing, and that is also not the renewable sources. Most of those are from the thermal. So that's the national context of our. So this is the system load curve of Nepal in October. That's for the peak day. So we can see that it's almost stable during the morning to the day.
Ramesh Kumar Maske, Director of Student Welfare Dictatorate from Kathmandu University and President of Nepal German Academic Association.
Tibet activities largely remained in the form of trial and error, uncoordinated and scattered. The development intervention initiated by the government, the CTVT, as well as non-government agencies, characterize critical weakness at different phases of the training cycle, without involving employers and other relevant stakeholders.
Before I start, I would just like to give a brief background, because many times there is a distinction between the private sector or the industry and the academic sector. So as you know, the private sector is always driven by its commitments to its various stakeholders. So primarily the first being its customers, then the employees, then the investors, and then it is about its commitments to society and the sphere of influence in which it exists. So in that order, that's how the industries or the private sectors would try and cater and develop. So many times, the private sector would not be, the instigator or the lead, the sector to develop things that are beyond what is in demand. So, first is like we as the users of skilled manpower, do we want skilled manpower or do we not need the skilled manpower? Of course, we do need skilled manpower, because having skilled manpower means a lot of things. It first increases productivity, which directly or indirectly then relates to better productivity and ultimately to profitability. It reduces the lag time. That is, from the time that we actually have a recruit to the time that we can release responsibility or give that recruit a responsibility to do his work or her work more efficiently and independently. And it creates a safer environment. Having a person with responsibility or having delegating responsibility to a person who knows what is to be done is actually a much safer working environment than not having a person or a person who is inadequately trained to do something. So I think the basic question is, do we need skilled manpower? Of course, we are desperate for it and we need skilled manpower. And then in our local context, what do we do? Is we have institutions like CT, VT, and there, I believe, as the Vice Chairman just said, there are about 229 different private institutions providing various trainings. But apart from that, what we have felt is that these trainings are somehow not directly linked to our industry, because maybe we are few and far in number. So we run training programs to help people who have basic training adapt to the working environment in our organizations or in our factory or in our various place of work. So these trainings are normally like 3 to 6 months where we help adapt them. And why we do it is because it is our basic need, and we would like to have people who are more proficient at what they do. They have some expertise, and because they are better equipped to handle their job, they help the entire assembly line or the entire production facility perform better. So, it's very essential for especially engineering firms or firms that are related to manufacturing to have trained manpower. Somehow we feel that there is a little bit of gap between what actually graduates from various training institutions come, the knowledge that they come with, and what they actually face in the working environment. That is probably technology changes faster than textbooks. So, it just takes a little while for everyone to catch up. But I'm sure, these things can be overcome. And from our side, as I said, we run a few orientation programs or training programs to help people, bridge this gap. But apart from that, there are a few situations which I think are more or less, by and large, prevailing across various segments in the country. One of them is we actually are a country with very few standards. So when there are very few standards, it's very difficult to benchmark, what is good, what is bad, whether it is to standard or it is not to standard. And I think as a result of this, if you see across the board, skilled people, especially engineers, and I see a lot of aspiring engineers and future engineers, the skilled people's role is diminishing. What I see is that roads today are being built by excavator drivers. They are the designers. They are the ones that take the excavator and then they build the roads. Electricians are replacing electrical engineers in doing house wiring, designing. So since we do not have standards, it becomes very difficult. And I think especially for the future engineers and for future technical skilled laborers, it's going to be very difficult, and probably that is the reason when people don't find a conducive environment to work or appreciation for work within the country, people migrate and work outside. So I think one of the main challenges that we have is we don't have standards, and standard is, I think, a very important. If people we have to receive or get good service or quality of work. So apart from that, there are some basic changes I think which we also need in our training methodology or the education methodology. First, I think we need to evaluate is what is the domestic need, because the demand for skilled labor or the demand for manpower always will vary between one is the domestic need, like what are the domestic industries, what do they need, and since we are a net labor or manpower exporter, we also can evaluate what is the overseas need. Because I see that for the last 20 years we've been exporting manpower, but we are exporting manpower of the same caliber and same skill. We've never done work to upgrade that. Like if we were exporting basic labors 20 years back, we are not exporting many engineers today. So whether it is a domestic need or whether it is for the overseas market, we need to evaluate what is the need, and on the basis of the need, we need to have our academic curriculum and we need to have our training programs based on that. Because many a times, I mean, I can only share my experience. Many a times I find is like when we have people coming across, they come across with knowledge that is pretty obsolete or that is irrelevant to the times of today. So we need to upgrade that. We need to have more relevant and more as on date knowledge of how things are to be done. And I think there needs to be a little greater. The Vice Chairman of CTVT did mention that there was, and the Professor did mention that there was some alignment between the university and CTVT between various industries. But I think that alignment with the service user and the technical manpower creation, that alignment still needs, that gap still needs to be bridged. And if we, as I shared from my personal experience, that we have people coming across with inadequate knowledge, or I would not say knowledge, but inadequate skills for the times of today. So that the difference needs to be bridged, I think, a little bit. So a lot of trainings and a lot of things I think can definitely help. But also what we need to address is the sustainability issue. Because we create manpower, I know there are a lot of I can just share an experience. There are a lot of CTVT institutes which create or develop mobile repair technicians. We develop the manpower, but how do they sustain it? So that sustainability issue is also a little bit of a challenge. We did realize that there was something like this, and we actually run a program today where we are supporting about 40 different technicians set up service centers across the country. So what we do for them is that they set up and they run the center, and we support them. And we support them so that we can actually help them run their business on a day-to-day basis. So we give them business, and in lieu of the services that they provide to us, they charge us. And we continue that cycle, so it's an ongoing cycle. But I think other institutions also need to look into that. And I think what we have found is that imparting technical skills is also important. But at the same time, entrepreneurial skills also I think should be a part of the training in various CTVT courses. Because that's where I think we find a big vacuum when we deal with such people. So not taking any further time, I would like to thank all the other panelists for their inputs, and thank you, Excellency, for the time given.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tama. Bayern Electric. Bayern is a German region. It's called that way. And since 20 years, I'm producing electric parts, mainly for cars, but others. And I'm exporting them, all of them, to Germany, to the European market, on time, the right quantity, the right quality. They're used in German car parts. So I'm also a German producer myself. This was absolutely astonishing, and I still think there is no one else in this country right now who does that. There are a few others companies who produce high quality goods to export them altogether, but in this sector I think it's quite unique. You have, you're Nepali, you have a bachelor in electronic engineering from India, but also an executive MBA from Pokhara, and you've joined Nepal Bayern Electric in 1997. You were its general manager since 2011, which is really, I think, a success story. So perhaps someone who is actually getting products done in Nepal by Nepalis skilled labor, but is part of the global value chain, the European value chain. How do you see question of getting a skilled labor. What is the, how do you get them? How do you train them? How do you keep them back in the firm? And how is the relationship with Europe maybe helping or not helping?
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Then a lot of skills are to be given to those people.
Russia. But he then came to a country which is still the country, which is then Germany. So after his Master of Science in Civil Hydropower Engineering from Russia, he came to Germany, to Karlsruhe, and did a Master of Science in Resources Engineering and a PhD in Civil Engineering from the University of Karlsruhe. He is now professor at the Kathmandu University, a lecturer, civil hydropower engineer. You have also experience as in creating a forum in Germany. And last but not least, for me very important, you are the ambassador for the German Academic Exchange Service to promote these links between universities in this country and in my country. With this, I'd like to ask you maybe to wrap up already a little bit, but give something which perhaps Mr. Pawan, who can't be here because of his illness, would have said about how you observed it being in Germany. Also, this link between the academic or professional training institutions and the firms. What is different in Germany?
Thank you. And at the Kathmandu University, there was no civil engineering.
Is that there is still the situation of very good academic institutions or even professional training institutions producing, as you say, producing engineers, and the industry consuming them and not getting exactly what is needed because there is this gap in the level of skilled, medium level labor. And the two institutions, the two partners say, well, I'm producing, you're only consuming. We're consuming, you are producing what I need. This is a conversation between two people who don't actually see that perhaps training is a common responsibility. And that is what happens actually in Germany, is that for this gap, for this skilled labor gap, the technical, the trained technician, there is a common responsibility between state institutions, training institutions, and the industry. Half of the, or sometimes even more of the training of a skilled labor, of a technician in Germany, is not done by the school, or by the academic institution. It's done by the firm itself. So the trainee, at the age of 17, makes a contract with the German firm and says, I'm your apprentice. And the school intervenes after that and says, I'm going to train you in the spare time, a third of the time or half of the time you will spend in school. But you're actually already an employee of that firm. And that creates the link, and the status also. Because with 17, you're already earning money. You're learning, but you're earning money. So these 17-year-old teenagers, they don't have a problem telling I'm an apprentice or I'm learning this job, because there's money. It's already there. They don't have even to live at home if they don't want to. So this is a system which is unique to Germany and unique. There is Switzerland and Austria as well. It's the German-speaking part of Europe which does that. And it's striking that in these countries, youth unemployment is the lowest. It's an annual below 4% or less, which is probably, there is a link, probably. And the point, what was Mr. Dakal, who actually is in hospital with an appendicitis, he got just before getting on the train, would have said is that he is promoting a private initiative by a German firm, Voigt Hydroelectrics, to create such a school, which would not be in school, but an addition to something done by already an existing firm. He's trying to create these MOUs on a private basis to have apprenticeships, have people employed, young people employed by an enterprise, but still going to school in that school. So that is a bit the roundup I'm giving in his place. I would like to give the floor to questions from the floor. I will have to improvise a little bit. I see 2 now. Please, you first, second, third.
Georg Faust, and I have a question to you all. We heard nice words today, and all those words show us only one point of view, and this is the male point of view. So I had wished me to see up at the stage Professor Dr. Sudha Shrestha, or Dr. Sangeeta Singh, or Professor Dr. Martina Kaj, to make also clear that there is a female point of view. Maybe you could think about it in the future, also take women up. Sorry, that was all that I have to say.
Thank you.
No,
I think that was mentioned.
I am a professor in India. India and Nepal has nearly same way of thinking and same way of social structure. So I can correlate many things, and I appreciate the point which I used to make everywhere, that we must have vocational training first, then actual academic training. And this is very, very important, and I don't know why His Excellency has not mentioned that in Germany they have out of 4 years of education in engineering, 1 year is essentially training in some industry, and this model is working very nice. Japan is also accepting this model, but unfortunately we are following just British model, and which is not good. And recently Prime Minister of India said we don't need engineers, we need skilled workers more. Because those who are engineers, they say we will not work as in lower position. And this is the main problem point. We don't have much fund. So whatever we are teaching in university is highly subsidized. If we make an engineer or MTech person, they are mostly migrating to other countries. Like we say, 80% ITs are in California, or we are technical workforce in USA. But what India is getting out of it? Nothing. So my suggestion is that we must use first vocational, then academic training. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm Professor H.P. Lloyd from IIT New Delhi. I've been working in the field of energy education, renewable energy, for the last more than 5 decades. Perhaps the first few in the world having started education program in renewable energy. Actually, UNESCO, looking about 25 years before, thought of renewable energy education. They offered me a renewable energy education chair. And at that time, we did a world survey, including Germany, where the renewable energy training program is going on. So we know that the training in renewable energy, whether it is skill development or any other thing, is very, very important. But there are many issues. Some of the issues have been raised by the panelists. Many issues have not been raised also. I would like to say a few words about this. Like, we have to identify first of all the sources. Like in India, we have put a target of around 175 gigawatt. But how to achieve that? This was a political commitment. This was a commitment made by Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi in COP21 in France, that we will be able to meet 30% of the energy requirement in the country by non-fossil fuels. But we did not know at that time that there will be a problem. And the problem was education at all levels. We wanted to have, as a matter of fact, to achieve that 175 gigawatt, 1.1 million trained manpower in renewable energy alone. We did not know at that time. And therefore a massive program was started in India about 2 years before in renewable energy education, where we have a Surya Mitra training program in all universities practically. So every 3 months we are producing around 10,000 people at that level. So the level is very important. At what level you wanted the people to be trained. Then there are many other issues like the sources. whether we need solar, we need wind, we need biomass or hydro, because you said the hydro. Hydro is more important for Nepal, but for us hydro is not so important. So we have to identify the source first for a country. Then the modes, whether it should be formal or informal. Then the level, at what level we wanted to have the training. Primary level, secondary level, school level, higher level, research level. That also will be then the duration. Duration is also very important because I find in India, particularly the managers, particularly, they don't have the time. They would like to come only for 2 days or 3 days, 3 days only for the training. So we have to tailor-make training program for the senior managers. They are to be trained, they are to be told. It can be an orientation kind of a program for them. Then the target, whether it is for the general public, whether it is for the school children, whether it is for the technician, students, or policy makers. Even policy makers. Yesterday I had given a talk here. Unfortunately, it was not at a level where everybody is here. Otherwise, I would have told there are many problems in the renewable energy program itself, because the target is one. Like the policy makers, they do not know how to go about. Many questions are being made when I go to the Niti Aayog and even to the Power Ministry and even to the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy Sources, the Professor Gal, do you think that 175 gigawatt will be met or not met by the Indian government? So there are many issues like financial mechanism is one, trained manpower is another, policy issues is another. So we have to work on in all areas, and skilled workforce is very important. That the region means whether you are training to the villages or whether you are training to the at the national level, regional level or international level. Then I found in India and many other countries, I have been 150 countries of the world visited, there is no structured curricula. I am sorry to say like that, even in Germany. In German universities also they teach whatever they know it. The professor, whatever he knew it, or whatever he read it, he is teaching it. So structured curricula is very important. Then lack of competent teachers, that is also missing in India also. The teachers are not up to the mark. They are engineers. They are mechanical engineers. They are first-class engineers. They are from IIT graduates, the world's best. But they know very little about the renewable energy program. The lack of textbook is another. Very few textbooks are available in the field of solar energy or hydro energy.